Hi guys, I'm Sharon and today I'm doing the mid-year book tag. I've seen quite a lot of booktubers do this already. It completely went over my head that it's halfway through the year now until I started seeing all this mid-year content on my social media. I can't believe we're halfway through the year already. I love hearing about what everyone's favourite book is of the year that they've read so far. So all the questions and timestamps are down below. Question 1 is the best book you've read this year so far. This was such a tough one. I was going through all the books I've read this year and I've read quite a fair few, and I think I'm going with Wild by Kristin. And that's actually the very first book I finished in 2026. So somehow I managed to start off 2026 with the best book of the year so far. Like all other Kristin books, this one's really emotional. It was heartbreaking but also pretty heartwarming as well. I think that's why I liked it so much, because it wasn't just completely sad and emotionally destroying. This story basically follows two sisters, but one in particular who is a child psychiatrist, and when a really young girl is found abandoned in the woods with a wolf pup, this child psychiatrist is asked by her sister to help with the case, to help rehabilitate this child who seems very wild and feral because she can't talk, she walks on all fours, and she seems highly traumatized. So you follow the journey of them helping this child, and they also want to find out who her parents are and how she became to be abandoned. This is definitely one of my favourite Kristin books. I was also trying to think of the best thriller book I've read so far this year, and I really couldn't decide. Question 2 is best sequel you've read so far this year. And honestly, I haven't read that many sequels, and I'm really bad with series in general because I will read like the first or second book and then I'll just abandon. For some reason, I just find it hard to commit to series. And I think I've read a grand total of 2 sequels so far this year. I'm going with the second book in the Vera Wong series by Jessie Q. Sutanto, and that's Vera Wong's Guide to Snooping on a Dead Man. I also read the first book earlier this year, which is Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. I loved that book so much. In fact, that might be a close second favourite of the best book I've read so far this year. I entered my cozy mysteries era this year. I had no idea that I would love cozy mysteries this much. Vera Wong is basically like a 60-year-old Chinese grandma who lives in Chinatown in San Francisco, I think. She owns a tea shop and she lives above it. She loves sticking her nose into people's business, and she just entangles herself in murder and criminal investigations. The first book is definitely my favourite, but this sequel is also pretty good. This series in general is just really funny and charming and cozy, and I really hope Jessie Q. Sutanto writes more. We want a third Vera Wong book. Question 3 is a new release book you haven't read yet but want to. Recently, Poston came out with a new book, The Someday Garden, and they are one of my favourite romance authors. Their books always have a touch of magical realism to them, and I love magical realism in my books. I actually haven't read that many romance books this year, and normally summertime is when I devour the most romance books, but I just haven't really been in the mood, but I definitely do want to read this one. There are actually so many other new release books that I haven't read yet that I really want to. One of them is also The Anniversary by Alex Finlay. This is a thriller, and I'm not completely sure of the entire plot, but I think it might be to do with a possible serial unaliver who comes out once a year on the same day every year to commit an unaliving. But I've heard really good things about this thriller. Question 4 is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. The one I'm definitely looking forward to the most is To Dream in Darkness by Liang. Liang, I think, mostly writes contemporary YA fiction, but she has this one book called A Song to Drown Rivers, and it was one of my favourite books of last year, and I think this upcoming one is a similar genre. It's historical fantasy, and if it's anything like A Song to Drown Rivers, then I know I'm just gonna love it. I don't even remember the blurb, but I think it's something to do with the two characters being gods. That's all I remember, but that's all I need to know. I definitely will be reading it when it comes out. I'm also looking forward to The Good Parts by Normandin. I think this book is basically like the eternal sunshine of the spotless mind, set in this world where you can basically erase bad memories. Question 5 is biggest disappointment, and I'm sorry to say, but for me I think it might be This Story Might Save Your Life by Tiffany Crum. It wasn't a bad book by any means, but this book has been doing the rounds on social media, and so many people were saying this is the best audiobook they've ever listened to, and to be fair, it is a pretty good audiobook. The audiobook production is top tier, and there's a podcast element to this story as well, and I love a podcast trope, especially when I'm listening to the audiobook. So this one is a genre blend of thriller and romance, and I think for me, I just wasn't really feeling the romance, and in turn, the thriller side just didn't really grip me. I think I just prefer a thriller and a romance like separately. Question 6 is biggest surprise, and I have 2 books for this actually. Good Intentions by Marisa Walz and Boring Asian Female by Canwen. They are both thriller books, and I always thought I wasn't really into super unhinged thrillers. Whenever I read an unhinged thriller, I'm like, I don't know how much I liked that. I think that was too unhinged for me. And so then I ended up reading these 2 books earlier this year, and they are both based on an unhinged protagonist, but actually I really liked them both. I've banged on about Good Intentions by Marisa Walz quite a few times on my channel this year. Good Intentions is actually one of my favourite thriller books of this year so far. It's about a woman whose twin sister has passed away from a tragic car accident, and then on the day that she's in the hospital, she encounters this woman who has also lost her son on the same day. And then our protagonist just emotionally attaches herself to this woman and becomes obsessed with her and starts stalking her. And then in Boring Asian Female, you have the main character who is studying at Columbia, but her dream is to go to Harvard Law School, and she's really certain she's going to get in. And then she finds out she doesn't, but one of her classmates does. And then the protagonist becomes really curious about her classmate, thinking, why did she get in and why didn't I? So she then starts stalking her, and this also turns into an obsession. Both characters in both thrillers were so unhinged but also committed to their obsession that I was almost impressed. Question 7 is a favourite new author, debut or new to you? I think Marisa Walz and Canwen are both debut authors, so I'm really interested to see what they'll write next. Another new to me author this year is Kristin Berry, and they wrote We Don't Talk About Carol, which is a mystery book, but it's also so much more than just a mystery book. It's also a story about dysfunctional families and intergenerational trauma, especially in Black families. The main character in this book finds out that she has a long lost aunt who went missing many years ago, but no one in their family ever talks about her. So she takes it upon herself to investigate this case. I saw that Kristin Berry is set to release a new book next year, so I'm really looking forward to that. This was such a good story and I loved the writing so much. Question 8 is newest fictional crush. I'm sorry to say that, I'm quite boring and I don't have one. I feel like it's more common to have a fictional crush when you read like romance or fantasy, and I've barely read any this year. And this might not be surprising, but when you read a thriller book, the majority of the characters don't scream fictional crush. Maybe Eddie Flynn from the Steve Cavanagh series would be quite attractive, but then in my head I've kind of been picturing him as like Inspector Gadget. Question 9 is newest favourite character. This is hands down Vera Wong from the Vera Wong series by Jessie Q Sutanto. She loves to insert herself in other people's business, but she is so funny and endearing, and we love a Chinese grandma who just loves to cook for everyone. I also read The Puppet Show by M.W. Craven this year, which is the first book in the Washington Poe series. The main protagonist, Washington Poe, has a sidekick called Tilly, and I also love Tilly. She is extremely smart but also socially awkward, and she was just really endearing and funny as well. Question 10 is a book that made you cry. The most recent book that made me cry was Night Road by Kristin. This book was both so infuriating and heartbreaking at the same time that I think I simultaneously hated it and loved it as well. You're following one of the main characters, who is Lexi, and she's a teenager from a broken home. She's a foster child who ends up moving to a new place to live with an aunt, and she befriends this really shy girl at school called Mia. And soon Lexi and Mia become inseparable best friends. This book has dual POVs from both Lexi's POV and also Mia's mother's. And she's basically a really overbearing mother. You have some extremely insufferable characters. Some of the characters annoyed me so much in this. I don't want to say anything else because I don't want to give away spoilers, but read this if you want to be emotionally destroyed. Question 11 is book that made you happy. I was trying not to repeat my answers for these questions, but again, I just have to give it to the Vera Wong series by Jessie Q. Sutanto. Question 12 is most beautiful book you've bought so far. I don't really buy physical books that often anymore, and when I buy them, I normally like to buy trophy copies of books I love. But honestly, my bookshelf has run out of space. But this year I did get A Song to Drown Rivers by Liang, and this story is actually based off a Chinese legend. I don't even know where I've put the book right now, so I'm going to have to insert some B-roll, but it's a fairy loot edition and I managed to get this from Vinted. I really loved the sprayed edge as well. The main character in this is called Shisha, and the sprayed edge has Shisha's name written in Chinese characters on it. Question 13, the final question. What books do you want to read by the end of this year? I really want to read A Man Called Uwe by Frederick Bachman by the end of this year. This has been on my TBR for so many years now and I've been meaning to read it. I actually feel like I'm in my elderly person era this year. I've read so many books this year where the protagonist is an elderly character, and from what I've heard, this is another one of those stories that is really heartbreaking and heartwarming as well. So those were all the 13 questions for the mid-year book tag. What is your favourite book you've read so far this year? If you liked this video, I would so appreciate if you could like or subscribe. I post mainly reading wrap-ups and book recommendation videos. I read a lot of thrillers, but I also read a lot of other genres as well. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in my next video.